Can we overcome exhaustion by aligning ourselves with the will of the divine? Join us for this conversation about Gene Key 40 and Sabian Symbols, Virgo 7 through 12. Welcome to the Free to Be Free portal. I'm Julia Ananda, and I'm here with Gene Keys guide, Margaret Miller. Margaret, I'm so excited for where this exploration of this topic might lead us.
Hi, Julia. I'm excited as well. I feel like this topic is so important in my life right now, and I know through our talking about it before we started recording that it's really up in your face as well. So, and I'm sure that it's going to be resonant with the people who listen. And this is because the Gene Key 40 is the shadow of exhaustion, the gift of resolve, and the Siddhi of Divine Will. And, I think in our lives, in the world right now, there is this overwhelming feeling of exhaustion. And, this is because, as Richard Rudd points out in his discussion of this gene key, this is the dilemma of excess. And so it's like excess in so many different ways. We live in a world where we have been trained and programmed and to to go for more all the time, right? And to work harder and do more and buy more and be more and eat more and like there's excess. And this excess, anytime we have in our own personal lives or in the world in general, have excess, like too much of anything, it leads to exhaustion. It leads to physical exhaustion in the individual, and it leads to the exhaustion of our world, of our planet, the exhaustion of resources. And so it's really personal, but it's really global as well, this shadow of exhaustion. And so what I would like to do with this is really look at how we can move out of that shadow of exhaustion. It seems, sometimes it's quite difficult to imagine how to get ourselves out of that when we're so, especially if we're deeply involved in all kinds of things, but like things that we love and things that we have to do, things that we maybe don't love so much, but they are requiring our energy and attention. Exhaustion tells us in our own physical bodies that we're out of balance, right? That something is out of balance. And usually it has to do with excess. Excess of, like, eating too much can exhaust us, working too much can exhaust us, worrying too much can exhaust us, you know, uh, distracting ourselves too much can exhaust us. And so basically it all comes back down to what I think all of the shadows of the gene keys really point to is, are we the stewards of our own energy, or are we allowing our energy to leak out into areas that are unnecessary, that are not valuable to us? And so it's always this dilemma of excess, like where is too much energy going out in a direction that it shouldn't be going out in. And so like all of the other shadows, it is asking us to look at where we are blind, where our blind spots are, and where we are not willing or able to look at ourselves honestly. And we just came off of the shadow of dishonesty. And right before that, we had the shadow of half-heartedness. And you can see how if our energy is going out in 50 million different directions, that we automatically become half-hearted because we can't focus our energy in so many different directions. And so there is this real need to look at what we're committed to and to reevaluate what we're committed to. And in order to move into the gift of resolve, which is very much like commitment, like it's an energy of resolving to use our energy towards what our true self, our higher self, actually wants to accomplish in this lifetime, actually wants to experience, right? And what we actually want to spend our beautiful energy, our beautiful life force on, right? And so we talked about the life force in the 59th gene key, of dishonesty, intimacy, and transparency. And it really is about how bringing our energy into alignment with what our soul really wants, and to get clear on that. And so the resolve requires us to look at what we're committed to, and to maybe even come to a point where we let go of some of those commitments, the ones that are draining our life force, and only committing ourselves to things that are actually feeding us, and feeding the joy and the passion and the excitement in life, like things that cause us to become delighted, right? Because when we do that, when we make that commitment to ourselves and we resolve to use our energy in that way, we also have to pause. We have to take the breaks and say and really reflect inwardly to find out, what is it about this? Why do I feel exhausted right now? And rather than just going, oh, I just need to sleep more, or I need to, like take a break and watch TV, or whatever it is, to really feel into whether what we're doing, if you're like me, you have 50 things that you're interested in doing and only time for one or two in any given day. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to give up all of the things that we're excited about. It just means, where are we willing, and able to eliminate things that are unnecessary, like too much scrolling on social media, or too much TV watching, or too much eating, or too much whatever it is that's actually draining our energy. I mean, there's so many studies that talk about like how, especially in the US, and I don't really want to just focus on that, but in the United States, I've had, just yesterday I had a conversation with a friend from another country who came to the US and was shocked at the portion sizes, right? Like supersizing everything, and how that excess actually can't, that amount of food can't be digested properly. And so it causes us to become exhausted because our body's working so hard to try and assimilate all of that food. And so you can kind of take that analogy. I mean, it's literal, but also use it as an analogy towards other things, and find out what it is that actually is nourishing. And when it's really nourishing, whether it's food, or a study, or an activity, or your work, if it's truly nourishing, and of service, because this is always when we come to the gift frequency in any of the gene keys, and this one is no different, that it's that question, how can I be of the greatest service to the whole? Right? Because when we're doing that, when we're truly living our gifts, we are of service to everyone. Like when we're in absolute joy and following our passion, our gifts are flowing out into the world, right? And I can feel that in my body right now, even as I'm speaking that the energy begins to flow through us in a way that causes us to be revitalized. Like as we are giving our gifts out into the world, we are continually revitalized because we're in alignment with what you might call divine will. Because, divine will is different from our willpower, right? Or our free will, right? We can do whatever we want, right? Or whatever we think we want, or we can force ourselves to do things that we don't want to do because we think we need to get this or that or the other thing, and that's will exhaust us. But if we're doing things that are feeding us and really nourishing us, then we are in alignment with divine will. And maybe you can use our free will to do, we're still using our free will to accomplish those things, but we're also in alignment with divine will, which says, which is really kind of saying, who are you being? Not what are you doing, but who are you being? And so it really is coming into that, and we can only touch that divine will through that resolve, through resolving to spend our energy in the areas that are truly our gifts and our passions. And then we line ourselves up, or in some of the spiritual traditions that I'm really familiar with, it would be bending our will like a willow, bending our will to the divine. So bending that free will towards what would be the highest expression of ourselves and our our piece or spark of divinity in this lifetime. Right. So it really comes down to utilizing our energy and knowing how to become the stewards of our energy and be able to feel and to be able to notice where it's leaking out, right? Where we're spending too much time, too much energy, too much money, too much of whatever it is, and bringing that energy back in, reeling ourselves back in. Like even with too many things that to do, like my dilemma right now is about having so many things that I am interested in and that I love, that which ones can I focus on now, right? And what I discovered even just today is that if I don't necessarily have to give any of those things up. I just have to recognize that it's a work in progress, and I'm not going to um, be able to accomplish all of those things all at once. And so I can take a pause. I can work on one thing until the requirement is that I go do something else, right? Because that's usually what it is, that I have to go do something else, even though I'm, really excited about what I'm doing right now. There's horses and there's other things that I have to attend to that I love and that I'm passionate about. But if I take a moment and segment, right, segment my energy and my time and align myself with that next thing that has to happen, then I can come wholeheartedly and with resolve, with all of my energy focused on that next beautiful thing. So it's not necessarily about giving up all of these things, although there may be that too. And I believe there are, like even some things, yeah, like I say in my own life, that it's like, you know what? I can't spend any time doing that anymore because it's wasting my time. And it's wasting not just my time. It's not about how much time I have, because we don't know how much time we have. None of us know how much time we have here on this planet, right? It's more about the energy, and it's more about the the division of my focus into areas that aren't feeding me, that are draining me. And so I really like to just stress that when we recognize that we're in the shadows, when we're in the shadow of exhaustion, that it's asking us to take a pause and to reevaluate how we're spending our energy, and how and asking for and being open to being shown how to bring ourselves back into balance. And usually it has to do with trimming the fat, trimming the excess, right? And that was a phrase that I've heard a lot, but I also just heard it not too many hours ago as I listened to Richard Rudd talk about this, about this gene key. So I want to go into the Sabian symbols now and see what other insights they might bring to us in this. And so the first one is Virgo 7. And in a palatial harem, bright-eyed women laugh happily. Oh, and just as a reminder, right, the Sabian symbols, if you are not familiar with them, are a series of 360 word pictures that describe an archetypal energy, one for each degree of the zodiac. So Virgo 7, in a palatial harem, bright-eyed women laugh happily. Okay. So this Sabian symbol talks about um, like the sort of the waiting between activity and using our energy to go inward and to find out who we really are, regardless of our outer circumstances. Because like in a harem, that's a pretty controlled environment, right? And they're having to share resources and share uh, a mate and share, you know, their lives. And to be able to do that in this symbol, they're bright-eyed and they're laughing happily, even though they might be in a very difficult circumstance. And that happens because they're devoted, right? Or they're committed, at least at some level, to this life. And oftentimes that energy has to do with that courageous um like letting go of limitations, even though they may be sort of imprisoned in a way. They're making a life, they're making a beautiful life. And so not taking, because we have constraints. We have all kinds of constraints in our everyday lives, most of us do, but we can still be free inside of that if we are willing to go inward and find out who we really are. And so it's more about being than doing in this case. So that's Sabian symbol Virgo 7. So Virgo 8, an aristocratic 5-year-old girl takes her first dancing lesson. And so it's this socialization and training, and but also has to do with apprenticeship, like finding something that we love to do. Like, so we can sort of imagine, even though she might be being forced to take her dancing lesson, she might really enjoy it, right? And so when we find something, focusing our energy and attention on that that's what's required. The practice and the apprenticeship and the learning from a master is sort of what's required. There has to be, in order for it to blossom finally, it has to have that level of commitment and that level of focused attention and energy. And so we've seen symbols like this before that talk about this focusing our energy towards our higher awareness. So then Virgo 9, a modernist expressionist artist paints a strange canvas. And so this is like, the expressionist is finding their unique interpretation of whatever it is they're painting, right? They are bringing to life the inside, how they're seeing something or how their being is experiencing something. So this is an aspect of resolve that maybe I didn't speak to before, and that is that that when we are focused in those areas where it brings us joy or it brings us passion, then our authenticity and our true gifts come out. And this is, we have to be resolved to be true to ourselves and to be uh kind to ourselves and to nurture and nourish ourselves properly. And that includes taking those pauses and learning how to rest and relax. And that was actually part of the harem that I didn't talk about too, is that there's these periods of rest and where they're not, their attention isn't being required, right? And so taking the time for ourselves. So in this expressionist painter is really allowing the truth of his own perspective to come out onto the canvas, regardless of how it's going to be received, right? It doesn't matter what the outcome of it is. So it's a beautiful symbol that way. Then Virgo 10, two heads looking, peering out of the shadows. Okay, so this really talks about being able to look out and see beyond the shadows and to have this capacity for seeing the material and the spiritual, or seeing both sides of a situation, or being able to bring everything into a focus, bring all of our experiences, all of our activities into harmony. Okay, so it really is also the Gene Key 40 and this Sabian symbol are talking about being able to harmonize and to bring things into balance, being able to see the big picture in a way. Okay, so then Virgo 11, a typical boy molded by his mother's aspirations for him. And so this has a lot of different things, but one of the things that it talks about is personal excellence, being able to sustain our own excellence, our own creative consciousness, and sort of breaking away from what our parents' aspirations for us might have been, or society's aspirations might have been for us, and to really come into a, a knowing of what is true for us, right? And to also recognize that those aspirations, the parental aspirations, are for in our best interest sometimes as well, right? The things that they want for us often are to, to find love and to be successful in and happy in what we're doing, and to, to find a joyful life. And even though they might be focused on one particular area of that is really this expression of support and love towards us, and we can use that then to move into our own aspirations. And so it reminds us too that we need to distinguish between what our true aspirations are and what were maybe uh, societal or parental expectations that don't have anything to do with what we actually want to be spending our beautiful life doing. So then Virgo 12 is a bride uh, having her veil snatched away, like the groom snatching the veil away and uncovering her face, right? And so it's the disclosure of the mystery, the hidden mysteries, and and so finding the ways to, like, it's an absolutely pure motive, right? They have just gotten married, right? And so they are ready to move into this intimate space together, into this intimate life together. And so being willing to, they've made that commitment and being willing to be exposed, right? And to be intimate and to be, you know, ready to go on that journey. So they don't know, right? This great mystery, what life is going to unfold for them. And this also speaks to sort of that area of divine will. Like, we don't know what how this life will unfold. And it's very possible that a lot of our dreams and visions and aspirations won't be fulfilled, but something else will. And that as we bend our will, as we, in this case, come together in the union of marriage, that we trust that life and the universe is going to provide for us what we need. I mean, I think that's, it's a really beautiful way to look at a marriage ceremony is that you don't really know how everything's going to go, how everything's going to unfold. They have to trust. And so there's this coming back out of that into just talking about the gene key again, and moving, resolving ourselves to what really is important in our lives, and taking the time and slowing down, because this is part of the excess, is moving too fast and trying to solve things, trying to solve our problems or trying to make ourselves feel better by going to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, instead of being present with what's right in front of us and what we have to do, and finding the ways to focus on those things that are the most nourishing. Like, even if it means letting go of things that you know we thought we wanted to do, at least for a little while, focusing on what's right in front of us and bringing all of our energy and attention to that, we'll find that we get pointed in the proper directions, and things get just given to us by the universe, given to us, and that show us a new direction to go, or how to utilize that energy in the best way. So I really love this gene key, and I love these explorations. I think I said this last time too, because it's been so poignant for me in my own life. And so this is also something I wanted to talk about. I want to give you a chance to respond, but I also really wanted to just make sure I say this, that when we follow the sun, when we follow the seasons, when we live in in any way that we can, bring ourselves into an awareness of the movement of the sun across the sky during a day, right? Rising if we can with the sunrise, or looking at what gene key we're in this week and utilizing that energy, we get into a rhythm that is much more natural. And it has to do, these gene keys are our wisdom that's coming through our genetics, right? It's a living transmission. Richard Rudd says that so many times. It's a living transmission that is being explored, and the wisdom is coming through each of us as we explore it. And so that's what I'm finding in my journey through the gene keys, through astrology, looking at the new moons and the full moons, following that energy brings us into this flow. And this flow, when we're in that flow, we are responding to divine will. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say about that.
I love the one of the concepts that you said that we can find what delights us. What delights us. What a beautiful word. What a beautiful feeling to feel aligned to what delights us. I love that so much. And the other thing that I loved was that it brings us into harmony. It
Yes.
creates harmony in our lives. It creates harmony around us. It creates harmony within us.
Yeah. And you can feel that, right? When we're in alignment that way, or when we're delighted about something, the energy is flowing through us and we are being replenished. Right. And when we are trying to instead, the opposite of that is trying to force something, trying to make something happen and and really forcing our will. You can accomplish great things, and people do accomplish great things through willpower alone, but they do that at the expense of their life force. They do that at many, many times at the expense of their health and their well-being, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual well-being. And we don't have to do that. We, but in order to know the difference, you have to be able to recognize when you're forcing something. And if you're forcing something, step back, take a pause, take a break, right? And regroup and find out, maybe this needs to rest for a moment, and find that next thing that delights you, that feeds you, and spend more energy and more time on that. And that requires us, that takes effort for us to make times for the things that we really care about. But why are we here if we don't do that? Why are we?
I love that you said, what does our higher self want to experience?
Yeah,
That's a delicious question.
yeah.
What do our higher selves want to experience?
And trust that, because they're coming from a much higher perspective. That part of us is coming from a very clear perspective.
So
It's
that resolve helps us to find those things, but also helps us to know really clearly where we're leaking energy or where it doesn't feel right or we're in conflict with or exhausted in doing something.
absolutely, think about resolution, bringing something into higher resolution, clearly, seeing more clearly, and finding a solution is something coming to resolution. It becomes clear and it becomes resolved, right? And so yeah, our resolve allows us that clarity. It opens up that clarity and that knowing of what's important.
This is these three words, exhaustion, resolve, and divine will, or that phrase, it's move you really viscerally. you can feel all of those in your body, through a really low to just this beautiful um, connection and harmony and uplift. Yeah, that's a
Yeah, it is. It's powerful. And that's, that's where we have to find that's what true relaxation is, right? Because that's another definition of surrender, like complete relaxation of all our efforting and all of our, you know, all of our mind boggling and all of the things that we do that that stress us out, right? It's a surrendering to the will of the divine isn't like giving up. Like we say sometimes, we think surrender is giving up, but it's not. It's letting go of the need to force things, the need to try and control things, and to relax into the flow of life, and really, really feeling our connection to all that is, and knowing that, really, it's the I think it's is it in Buddhism they talk about the choiceless choice? Yeah, where really it's the choice, or the not the choice to allow the divine to flow through us. That resolve also, it has to do with bringing our focus to a fine point, corralling that energy, corralling our life force, and bringing it into what is essential. And when we do that, our will naturally aligns with divine will and becomes this direct connection to life force, to you know to love and to light. It's and then our light shines out into the world in the way that we intended when we came into this life.
truthfully, this is a enormous relief to have an understanding of how to overcome exhaustion through opening ourselves to divine life force, to delight and harmony and alignment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the hard work of it, because there's it's challenging to stay committed to what's important and not allow, other people's or society's expectations, or what it is to have too much control. Like we really have to be able to say no to
Yes.
things that we're not in alignment with, and that aren't in alignment with our highest expressions of ourselves.
Right. Right. Margaret, thank you for bringing this through for us. This is something that we all need to have a good understanding and a good toolkit of saying yes and saying no. Yeah. Thank you so much, Margaret. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And to our audience, if you loved this conversation as much as I did, please hit the thumbs up for like. Please subscribe because we're releasing wonderful videos, a couple every week. And leave us some comments. This is such a great topic. I'd love to hear your comments. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.